Hello everyone, and welcome to my latest tutorial video. I want to go over a quick introduction of what I did leading into completing the assignment that you're looking at for this week. For me, I've created some dummy tables just so that I can do this demonstration, and I'll walk through that real quick. As you can see, I created a table. My database for previous lessons, we have an employee table, but I called that the AD underscore employee table. So this is a dummy table that I'll know to be able to remove later. So I document everything I do. So I put a little documentation here. All right, this script is going to create table called employee, and you just look through this for review. I use create table employee, so I use the create table statement. I gave it a name called employee, and then I did my parentheses to say what all was going to be in that table. So here are the columns. Employee ID, I gave it a data type of number, and that cannot be null because that's going to be my primary key. Then I did first name and last name, both data types varchar2 with a data limit of 50. And then department ID number, this is going to be a foreign key because it's going to be a primary key in my table department. So since I have a foreign key, before I can put any data in here, I have to put data into the department table so that I can then come back into the employee table to add data. Here's my statement to create the primary key in the employee table, and using the alter table statement, I'm going to alter table. Well, what table? Well, the employee table. And what I want to do to alter this table is I want to add a constraint. Which constraint? I want to add the employee ID primary key. That is the name of the actual primary key constraint. And that constraint is going to be a primary key. And I want to reference the employee ID field. That is my primary key. That cannot be null as I described up here. So whenever I create a new entry, I have to have a new value for employee ID. Here's the foreign key constraint done just like the primary key constraint, only I called it a foreign key. And that is going to be the department ID, as you saw up here, of the department table. So reference the department table to make sure there's information there in department ID column of the department table. Then I created my table for department and my constraint for department for my primary key. Now I went back and added values into the department table. You see I put a note here to do this first because of the foreign key. These are why we create comments in our code so that we know why we're doing what we're doing, and it helps us think logically. So I inserted some values into my department table, insert into the statement where the department table, what, these values, and they must match the data types and the amount of columns we have in our tables. So we added the values here. Well, did those values work? Every time I do something, I always do a check statement. So I'll do a select all, run that, and we can see here I do have all 4 of those rows that I inserted into. Do the same thing for the employee table. So I added some rows of information in there, and then I check that, and the data is there as I expected. Well, now let's take a look at our assignment for this week, and I will use my dummy tables here to be able to give you some examples. Now hopefully as you were looking at your questions, it popped out right away. Oh, I've already shown you how to do this. Writing a simple query to view the data inserted in at least one of your tables created. That's the select all statement that I just showed you, and I've shown you this a few different times already. So hopefully you were able to check those as you were building them, but go ahead and write a statement and make sure that you're going to save this into your script here at the end. So don't delete your information, because at the end you're going to go up here and save your script with the name that's in the assignment. So make sure you don't write a statement then delete it, just so you have a clear screen. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at the next question there. Now the second one says, write a query to retrieve the marks obtained by the student for each exam attempted. Now this is just another simple select statement where you're going to select the information that's in that table. It's telling us here, write a query to retrieve the marks. So we know that there's a column called marks obtained by the student for each exam attempted. So if we go to our exam results table, then we could say to select marks from that exam results table. That's all it's really telling us to do. And it doesn't matter what. If I want to select those that are in departments, I could do that. Let's go ahead and take a look at an example. For this one, I'm going to be generous, and we're going to take a look at the exact question. So let's take a look at this. By clicking on the Find Tables, we can see which tables we have. The question asks us for each exam attempted. So this would be our exam results. If we click on that, we will see that we have marks as one of our columns. And the question says, write a query to retrieve the marks obtained by the student for each exam attempted. So the student, the exam, and the marks. So it's really just, you can copy and paste this. We'll select it all. Put this over here. You can put a comment, select marks obtained by student for exam. Then we paste our statement here, and we're saying to select. What are we selecting? We're selecting the student ID, exam ID. We don't need course ID, but we do need marks from exam results. So we have told it exactly what we want to do. And this is exactly how it should look. Select what? These three columns. There's no other columns, so there's no need for a comma here. Well, where do you want me to select this information from? Well, I want it from this table. So if we select this information and run it, we see that we have our results. Obviously we have more than 10 rows because we have more than 10 rows of information in there, but this is just a example of what we could do. We could go up here and we could change the number of rows to many rows so we can see them all, but for this example, that's all we need to do. So that's how you would do that question. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the next one here. Let's see, this one says we're going to retrieve the student ID and first name, so we know we need 2 columns of information for each student, and they're concatenated with the literal semicolon or full colon here. So we're going to concatenate some information, bring it together using the colon here, and this is just it seems silly because it might seem like it's really beyond your skills, but it's not. This is not that difficult to do. We're just going to simply select the information we need, which we know is student ID and the first name, and then we're going to create a statement with that to display. So like the student ID 1 has the first name of this. That's all we're really doing. We're just putting the piece of information like we were doing if we were doing this query, it might be for a report or a better looking display that we were going to forward on to someone, let's say in the supervisor, who wants to know all the names that are in that department across 3 shifts. Then we could do this and it would look a lot better for them. So let's go ahead and I'll show you something like this with my dummy tables. So if we go back here, and I'm going to use my employee table or my department table, doesn't matter, but I'm going to use my employee table. Let's go ahead and write that select statement now. So I am going to select, and for me in my employee table I have different categories. So if we go and look at the employee table, we'll see what all columns are being used, and it will be similar to what your question is. So I am going to select the first name and department ID, or we'll say employee ID. So I know I need a couple pieces of information here. I just want the first name and employee ID. That sounds good. Alright, so those are my first piece of information. And what I'm going to do is here I'm going to say select employee ID, and then I'm going to concatenate that. And I'm going to say that the first name and I can put whatever I really want here. So I'm going to say first name is, and I'm going to put a space because that will show, then my single asterisk because we are working with text, then the concatenate. Now I'm using my column first name, and let's just say this is, I want the result which will show up down here for like a column. I'm going to call this employee details for manager. And where am I getting this information? From employee. And I'll end that with a semicolon. So I should get a statement with the employee ID first, then some text, employee ID, I don't really need this. First name is, and what's that name? I'll get that information from the column first name. Let's go ahead and run this and see if I have any syntax errors and if it works. I do have a syntax error, which is what I expected from doing this. That is exactly what I wanted to see. I hope you're able to see why this didn't work. And I did this on purpose just because, as I said, let's see if we have a syntax error. Be very careful with syntax whenever you're working with SQL. For this example, what I did was, you saw that I put the underscore here. Well, I need to do that between these as well, because it's saying run all of this and then it looks for the next statement, but there's nothing there. It's expecting the from statement here, but it's way down here. So if we put some underscores here, this should fix our issue. Now we're saying select the employee ID, and we'll just say, you can change this if you want, but I'm going to say this ID or the first name, yeah, whatever you want. For this ID, the first name is, that looks better for like a manager to read. And then we're saying pull the first name, because these are our two columns. And then we're saying display employee details for manager as like a column, and get that information from the employee table. Now let's see if we got our syntax errors fixed. We'll hit run, and there we go. For this ID, the first name is Stormy. 5, for this ID, the first name is Mono. 3, first name is Missy, and so on and so forth. Now, if we want to validate that, we can run our select statement again, and we see that 4 is for Stormy and 5 is for Mono. If we run that again, 4 is for Stormy, 5 is for Mono. So we know that our select statement works for this, and we were able to concatenate, piece together some information, and make it look like a single statement for our manager to be able to read. So hopefully you understand that one now, and you can manipulate that however you want. Just make sure that you follow the instructions about retrieving the student ID and the first name for each of those individuals. Let's take a look at the next one here. The faculty of the different departments realized that the marks entered in exam results were showing an increased value of 5 marks for each entry. All right, let's take a look at this. And we can break that down, and really we're just going to look at, just are we correct in what we were seeing? So the faculty of the different departments, so all the departments that are in our exam results table that we looked at earlier, they are seeing that the marks entered in the exam results table for some reason increased by a value of 5. So if we want to see that, and maybe we've got an old list we want to compare it with, we can decrease this value of 5 to show what it should have been. So a very simple select statement where we're going to treat our marks column and subtract by 5. We're not going to be changing the data in the table, only what we see on our display, just like we did with our previous question. So if we take a quick look at our tables and we take a look at the exam results table again, we see that marks is a number column. So we can change that. It's not a primary key, so we can make changes to it, but it's not going to actually change what's shown in our table, only on our results display. So we can take a look at this. We want to see, let's say we want to see our student ID, we want to see our exam ID, we want to see our marks ID, but we want to take that value that's currently stored and subtract it by 5. So just like a math problem. And then we can show that instead of being displayed as marks, we can say changed marks, or we can change whatever the display is. And we do that with using the as term. So we'd say like as marks minus 5 or manipulated marks, however we want to do it, and we want it from this table. And we can always use this to save us a little bit of time. It's all based on what you want to do. And as an example, let's just say I am going to select this, and I'm going to say I want to see the student ID, the exam ID. I don't really care about the course ID. You might. And I want to see marks, obviously. And I want to see marks differently. I want to see marks as, I don't know, grades. Now all I'm doing is on my display it's going to show differently. When I select this and I run it, grades instead of marks. If we go and run our, let's just say a select all from this, then we will see different results. We will see the actual column names as they should be. And there you see marks. So we can change what the display is going to look like, but it doesn't affect the table. And if we go back to this one here, let's say I want to change marks into like a value, a different value. I can just put parentheses around that. And let's say I'm going to multiply it by 100. And I want to see this as a different name. Let's just call it something. Or some score. That's all we need to do. I'm going to put an underscore here, obviously, so we don't have a syntax error. I know someone was hopefully watching and thinking that as I was typing. So we're going to change this. We're going to run it. We see it's called some score, and our value has been multiplied by 100 that was stored in there. If we look at this and run it, if we look at student ID 740 for exam ID 570, we'll see that the marks value was 70. We multiplied it by 100 in ours. And we see we get exactly what we expected, 7,000, 70 times 100. That's all you're really doing for that question. All right, with 5 and 6 here, we are seeing that 5, we're just manipulating the data again, and you can see that displaying the percentage of days students have taken off and their eligibility for taking the exams. Well, really we're just looking at our student attendance table, obviously. Then we are going to select our student ID. Then we're going to do kind of like we just did in the previous question, where we're going to do some calculations, and that would just be number of days off divided by number of working days times 100. And you can call that eligibility, if you want to do that, eligibility for taking, days off, or eligibility for exams. And then obviously we're getting that from the student attendance table. 6, we're doing a concatenation statement again, so you've already done that. 7, doing the same thing using concatenation. Let's take a look at number 8 here. Now 8 says to display the distinct department ID from the course table. You should recall from going through your reading and the syntax different modules there that were in the lesson. You should remember what distinct is and how that will only to show one value for that column that you are displaying. So if you're saying distinct department ID, you'll only have one department ID that shows up, and we'll eliminate those. So this should be very simple to run. So let's take a look at how I would do this with my dummy tables that I created. And if you recall from up above, my employee tables, I had a few different people in the same department. So if we take a look at those tables, we can, or from that table, we can see how this distinct works. All right, you can see I have a few different people I have a couple different people here in Department 10. So if I want to do that distinct of the department ID, it's very simple. I'm going to copy that select statement, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select distinct as the keyword, and I want department ID. Make sure that it's exactly how it is in your table. And I'm going to do that from my employee table. And I get my semicolon here. So I should only see department ID in my results, and I will only see exactly one record that this is going to show which departments I have in there. So I won't see multiple of the same department. So we'll go ahead and hit run. So department ID is all it's shown because that's all I've asked my statement to show. And I have 4 different distinct department IDs. It's that simple. Number 9 here, let's look at number 9. Number 9 says to display the course details for the spring session. So this is where we're going to use our where clause to give specific criteria to the database for our results. So for this one, you can say we want to display our course details, all of our information from the spring session, which is obviously going to come from our course table. And then we're going to say where, and then we're going to give it our criteria. The session equals whatever the ID is for the spring sessions. That's all you're doing it. And I can do a example here. Let's say if I run my statement again, and I'm going to use the previous example. Let's say I want to display all of my information where the department ID is equal to 10. That way I know I have 2 results. So I'm going to say select. And let's just say I'm going to put all, just to keep it simple. From, I am working in the employee table. Now I'm going to give it some criteria. Where it meets some specific criteria, so where the department ID is equal to the value of 10. Now if I run this, if everything's correct, we should have 2 rows return, and that's exactly what we expected. Let's say I wanted to change it to where first name is Rollin. I could do the same thing. So I can just manipulate this to say first name equal to, and since we know it's text, we have to put our single quotes. If we run this, we should have 1 row that returns. And there we did, 1 record that looked through all of the rows and said, okay, in the first name column, it must be exactly this. And that's what turned up. Let's say we change this up a little bit. Let's say that we use the same thing. Let's say where, let's make this a little fun. Employee ID I don't know, is greater than 1. Now we know that we have one that's equal to 1. We don't have any that are less than 1. But out of our 4 rows of information, we should only, or our 5 rows of information, we should only get 4. Because all of these are greater than 1. Now I would have to say if I wanted 1 included, greater than or equal to 1. But let's say we want to take it even further. Let's say we don't want to show 1 or 2 or 5. So we want everything between that. So let's say we're employee ID is between 3, and you can change it, and I want you guys to experiment with these. Let's experiment. I said I don't want 1 or 2, and we don't want 5. So if we go, okay, I want everything between 2 and 5, what's that going to give me? And then just try it. Run it and see if it gives you the results you think that you are expecting, and if not, change your script. See, we've got 2 and we've got 5. We didn't want that. So now we know that we really just want everything between 3 and 4. And that's exactly what we get. Let's say we wanted everything between 3 and 5. That's exactly what we got. Or let's say we want everything between 2 and 5. We expect C2, we expect C5. That's exactly what we get. Let's say we change it to, you can change it to department ID. And you can say everything between, that includes 10 and 30. Obviously you would get that. Even though we know we have another department that's 100, so we would not see the 100. So you can play with these however you want. Just make sure that you're doing some testing and seeing if you're getting the results that you expect. And if you're working with dates, even though it's a number, remember that you have the forward slashes in there for your date fields. So make sure that you put the date information in single quotes. So when you're using the where clause, just make sure you're using proper syntax or you're not going to get the information you want. Now let's talk about where something is in a group. And that would be an example here on 13. Display the course details for departments 10 and 30. So we know we have different departments, so we want to make sure that we are seeing everything there. So here with this one, you would use your department ID table, or I'm sorry, your AD course table for number 13 here. And you're going to display everything. You can display all, or you can put the column names, whatever you want to do. From the AD course, where your department ID is in 10 and 30. So let's do an example with mine. Let's go ahead and look at this, and you know that I have different department IDs, and I can do 10 and 30 as well here. So I'm going to select, and I'm going to keep it simple, all from employee, where my department ID is in, and I know I have two values, and I just list those. $10, 30. So it should include all rows where the department ID is equal to 10 as well as 30. And if we run this, you see that that's exactly what we got. Only those employees who are in Department 30 and Department 10 were included. That was it. Now what if we don't know the exact value, but we know that there is a letter in there? And if you look at 14, that is what we should see here. Display the details of students whose first name begins with the letter J, but we don't know everything else. So we just want to see everything that begins with J. Well, on mine here, and of course for that question, you are going to use your student table, your AD_student table. And for me, I'm going to use this one, and let's just say I'm going to pick everyone whose first name begins with M. So I'm going to very simply select all from employee, obviously again for me, where their first name is like, I just know some part of it, and I'm going to put M. So anytime there's an M here at the beginning, it should show that. We know we should have at least 2 entries here. We run that and see if Mono and Missy are there, and they are not. So we've got some type of issue here. I did not put a percentage sign there. So it will say, okay, it has to begin with M, and then I don't care what else is after that. The way I had it was just saying their name is just M. So that's a silly syntax error, easy to correct. Now we say M and then whatever after that, and we have Mono and Missy as we expected. So you can play with that and do some, things around that to see how that works for you. Just get a very comfortable feeling of using the like command. When I say have some fun with it, as an example, let's just say I put another of the special characters here, and I'm going to take this M and just put, an O. And then we'll say that we don't know what's before it. We just want the first name to have an O in it, because there could be characters before the O and after the O. So if we go ahead and run this, we'll see we have several examples here that all have O in the first name. So just have some fun with that. Alright, let's take a look, see if there's anything else really that's important for you to complete this. I don't know, let's just pick one here. I mean, you can combine some statements. If we look at 15, display the details of students who have opted for course 190 or course 193. Very simple. You're just going to say, where course ID equals this or course ID equals that. Very simple. If you look at 16 here, we're saying the department 30 for fall session ID 200. So we have some and information here. We're going to say we want the department ID equal to, what do we say here, 30, and session ID equal to 200. Nothing too trivial there. Let's jump on down here to look at number 20. Display the top 5 students. Here we're going to use something that hopefully you paid attention to when you're reading and watching everything, is we're going to use the fetch command. So we're going to select everything from our exam results table, and we're going to order it by their marks, the grades, and we want to fetch the top 5 rows. Let's go ahead and take a look at this one. Alright, so we'll use that one specifically. So let's just go ahead and say we are going to select. And what are we going to select? We're just going to select everything. And I'm going to put from, obviously, the AD underscore exam results. We're going to order it by the marks. Remember that. We want this to be descending. Let's go ahead and take a look at what this is going to give us. So if we run this, we see that we have, here are our marks, and we have descending order, so from the greatest to least. If we changed our script to be ascending, it would be from the lowest. And you can do that just for fun, just to see what you're working with. That is the default. So if we run this, there we go, lowest to highest. And we've got more than 10. So if we change this back to descending, and we run that, we know that when we finish our script, we should see 99, 97, 97, 91, and 91. Those are our top 5. So student ID 770 should be first, and 710 should be our 5th one. So we're going to add on to our select statement. So we ordered it, so we know what the marks are. Now we want to fetch those first 5. So fetch first 5. Let's just make it 10 since we have 10. Those are the only ones we want. So if we look here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, as we expected. 730 will be our last one with a mark of 85. So 770 and 730. We run this. 770, 730. If we wanted the top 7, we just change that to 7. $770, and we only have 7 rows, and there's 720 with the mark of 89. Not too difficult, just making sure you apply the information that were in the lesson to your actual assignment. I think you guys should be fine on completing your assignment. We've looked at several of these examples. If you have any specific questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And remember, from your assignment, you do need to save all of your scripts. You know, I will just overwrite some of mine. You should not. You should make sure that you are documenting them. Even put like question 1 as a dash question 1 if that's what you want to do, and then save everything as the instructions have given. As you see, your script should be saved as module 11 underscore whatever your last and first name are underscore queries. So that way I can go into the Oracle Apex and look at your queries. But you can also, what I would do is copy and paste all these into a text document and then upload that as well into the gradebook. Hope you guys have found this lecture informative. I know it's long, but there's a lot to do here, and I wanted to make sure you had another resource for understanding the content and applying it to your assignment. Hope everyone has a great week, and I appreciate all your feedback.